Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I have a guest of all guests for you today. His name is Mr. Tommy Schaff. Tommy owns a company called Major League Sales, and Tommy is one of the guys that I had looked up to for most of my life, quite frankly, in selling. And I was able to get him on the podcast because I wanted to talk about 1% earners. In other words, what does it take to get into the top 1%? Because everybody's in selling, or people who have companies, they always want to make money, but we're going to go in very, very deep. This is a longer episode than normal. So, I was able to keep him on the call. He was so gracious in doing so. So we're going to talk about what to do to become a top 1% earner in sales. Get your notepads out and take really good notes. Let's go talk to Tommy right now. Tommy, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, it's great to be here.
So, all right. So those of you who don't know Tommy and I go back a long history. He's one of my mentors, a guy I looked up to when I was with the Tony Robbins organization, Chet Holmes organization. Tommy was like the guy that you just listen to all the time because brilliant stuff just came out of his mouth every single interaction. So today I've asked you to come on, Tom, because what I'm looking for is, let's talk about what separates the boys from the men, or the little girls from the large, players in the industry, and basically what gets people to the top 1%, because you have a company called Major League Sales. Why don't you tell people what you do, and we'll go from there.
Sales consultancy, and I have two businesses. One's for private equity portfolio companies and to grow them for exit. So we're exit value creators. And my other one trains financial advisors.
And you're an avid baseball sports fan, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you got a collection of baseball memorabilia like I don't think anybody else has. So it's amazing how much you have. Tom, let's talk about, okay, what makes not a salesperson, but a top 1% earner? What's the differentiation from your perspective of what makes somebody that elite performer, if you will?
Well, I mean, there's 100 fathers to any success. And most of the things would sound trite. The thing that I believe that's probably more controversial, it's probably worth giving some of the currency that we have today of our time, is I think most people think they're problem solvers. But my opinion, the greatest aren't problem solvers. They're problem finders. What they seek are, who has this problem? And then they help a client recognize this is a problem they have and help them understand, monetize. Here's the cost of not solving this. Our greatest competitor is never another company. It's status quo. And so in the debrief of all deals that go bad, it's people keep with what they've always done, and it might be they keep doing nothing. Our answer is, instead of trying to convince people what they should do, we should help them understand the consequences of what they're not doing and to see if they're really relevant. When we change messaging from what we do to the problems we solve, people say, I have those problems, and then they talk. When we say, here's the things that I solve, here's my solution, they fold their hands and they say, hey, tell me how that works. And they ask lots of questions, and we're like, they're interested. And they grab all this information, but we have no leverage. And they have no leverage on themselves. So if I look at my last 28 years of being a sales coach, I've found if I make my emphasis on the problems that we solve instead of the solution or what I have, the whole conversation does a flip. And there's a time where prospects sell you that they need to buy instead of you selling them that you want to sell them.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So what I'm hearing is the messaging in which we use, if we focus it on problems that they may not know they even have, or that they do know they have, but we're messaging in that capacity, they're going to respond to us much better than if we just come out with a standard elevator pitch per se.
Well, let's try this, and we'll use something that, I know that on your podcast. And by the way, congratulations to you. I mean, if there's a guy that deserves to have a successful show like that you're having, it's you, Doug. The things that I saw you do at Better Business, Business Breakthroughs International, you were fantastic and understated, way too humble for your show here. So good for you. When I think about the audience, and you have all these people out there that are listening from a myriad of industries, we could get very granular, but then the answer would be, well, my business is different. I like to go into something that we all can relate to, and that's talking to a financial advisor.
Okay.
Now, when a financial advisor calls you, Doug, and says, hey, Doug, Tommy Schaff, I work at X insurance company, Acme Financial. I'd like to, immediately you're going, sales call, don't want to talk to you. And you're saying to yourself, I already have somebody. Listen, everybody that's over 30 years old that makes a living has somebody that they work with. Most people have 5 people that they've worked with. If we try to go to, I have a solution that's unique, good luck. But if I say, hey, Doug, big picture, I'm a financial advisor. There are 1,000 of them in Nashua, probably in your zip code. The only time a successful business coach and entrepreneur like yourself ever wants to talk to me is if they fall into one of 3 buckets. Do you mind if I share them with you? And if they don't make any sense, then kick me to the curb. Now I'm going to give them the problems. And the problems are usually constructed in a way that there's a syntax. There's 3 parts. There is an emotion, there's a time where the problem occurs, and then there's a consequence to having that problem. So I might say, you're frustrated that as you take a look at all the piles of statements from your various investments with all your advisors, you say to myself, I'm winning the lottery. I've stacked up cash high and deep. The interest, the return rates are phenomenal, but I have no idea how I'm going to distribute those proceeds to create income streams, and I wonder if I'm sub-optimized. I'll pause. You know how many people have that problem, Doug? Every person in the world, I've come to find out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we live in a world that loves to invest money, and we stack it up and we look at return, when that's never been the question. The question isn't what return can I get and how tall is the pile? The question is, how much will I be able to spend and for how long? If I change what I do to the problem I solve, the conversation sounds different, and we differentiate, and I can take apart any advisor. So that's kind of how that structure works.
So that's gold. And so I imagine people sitting here going, makes total sense, because it does, obviously. How does some start? I mean, how do they know the problems in the industry? Or is it research? Do they call people? What do they do? Because people would be going, what do I do?
Well, you're assuming that what we start with is find a need and meet it. I think we probably should start with is, what are we good at and what do we have? So who are we? What do we have? What do we do? A good place to start is to say, what do we over talk about? So people say, I have this experience and this is what I have. And the more they talk about what they do and their bona fides, their credentials, the more they sound like everyone else, and it moves to commoditization. There's no difference. So, but we do need to know it. For 1,000 years, I mean, for all of our careers, Doug, you've heard feature benefits, and we need to know feature benefits. The problem with feature benefits is not that they're bad. It's that everyone says that, so you sound like everyone else. What does the top 1% do? The opposite of what everyone else is doing. Okay, so we can cull and get pushed out into a different pile and not be in the herd. We start with, here's my feature, and then I'd say, okay, so this is what I think is unique. This is what I think is good. Here's the benefit of that. But then I say, what's the consequence of not having my benefit? Now, if I say to you, here's these problems, people have a hard time finding it. You know, my experience, Doug, is that people, they have wonderful, perfect memories, but gosh darn it, do they have crappy filing systems? Like, we can probe your brain with a literal probe, and you could find out every memory of your life, but you can't find them because you don't know where to look. But sometimes we go out and there's a temperature or a song or a smell, olfactory being really one of the great sense, like take us back machine.
Sure.
But when I am told where to look, I can find anything. I have 6,672 bobbleheads within 30 feet of me. Okay, because I have a disease, Doug. I am a hoarder. But if I said, find this bobblehead, you'd be like, it's impossible. There are thousands. But if I said third shelf, third row of, I have 38 bookcases full of them. Go about 5 high, look for the red one with the wolf, like you'd find that. So what we want to do is we say, we are frustrated that in this place, frustrated that at retirement, frustrated that when you pull out your financial junk drawer full of statements that you've never ever opened up, okay, you tell them where to look, and then you tell them the problem that's in that place. Then people go, that's me. And when you're really good at it and you give 3 of them, you say, hey, I don't know if any of these are even on your radar, but if there were even one we're talking about, Doug, what would it be? And they say, I have all of them. Well, there's another person saying, oh, it's impossible to do this business. There's so much competition. Everybody already has somebody. Your problem is you don't know what you do and the consequences. And because you focus on what you do, it's kind of an ethnocentric. It is egocentric. It is, I talk about me instead of I talk about the problems you see in your world. Now, when I get you to see the problems in your world and you raise your hand, I get to say, tell me about that. And as they talk, who's selling who?
Yeah, they're selling themselves basically, right?
Yeah, so messaging, my world, I think messaging is the meta. If I can message, I don't have to have a lot of the fight in the dog because everything's easy. The persistence, all the stuff. I was talking to a guy earlier, and we had a mutual friend that's no longer with us who prided himself that he chased a guy for 17 years. Okay. My question was, okay, that demonstrates persistence. He called it pig-headed discipline.
Right.
I would say maybe if you would have understood what you do and the consequence of you not being there, you wouldn't have had to chase him for 17 years. Like, you wore them out finally, but there's like 8 humans in the world that can do that, get beat up every day.
Right.
There's an easier path. The easier path is quit talking about what you do. Talk about the problems you solve. Be a problem finder. The day I became a problem finder, instead of being a problem solver, was the day that everything changed for me.
Great advice, Tom. So we're speaking with Mr. Tommy Schaff. He owns a company called Major League Sales. Check it out for sure. Tommy, I kind of approach messaging in a way, it's like you get let's say a guy wants to ask a gal out, for example, right? And we've all seen this happen, our friends, right? They go up and they have this ridiculous line and they go up and they try to be cute or whatever, and they get shot down. But when they focus on something that she's interested in, and especially maybe it's a challenge that she's had in her life, and they're sincere, they end up with dates. So what I heard you say is you just apply that same principle to a business or a similar principle to a business, and you'll have much better results.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my mentors, and I'm one of his trainers, Robert Cialdini, wrote the book Influence.
Mhm.
Um, in his research, he found out that there's the parts that we don't want to tell, the parts that are potentially going to be an objection later, where we don't have all the goods. We can wait till somebody brings it up, asks about it, or finds out. And then what the perception is, you can't be trusted. And should I believe everything else you say? So once we get our messaging, another thing we add to it is the truth. My second controversial idea, based on what I just said, is don't handle objections, bring them up as soon as possible. We don't handle objections. We say, hey, before we spend a lot of time, do you mind if I share something? And then you put up whatever's on the table and we deal with it. Let the prospect sell you on why they'd still talk to you, despite that you brought this up. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I was working with a software company. It's called Business Objects. And it was a big, multinational company, and they wanted me to do training. Now, I'm one guy in my underwear in my basement, right? And they're multinational, all kinds of languages. I don't have any ability. I studied Latin. I can't speak any language. I can read a bunch of Romance languages, but I can't speak anything. And they're like, hey, we've been referred to you. It's the chairman and the CEO of the company. We've been referred to you. We want to work on some things. We think that would be really great to, see what you can do for us when it comes to our sales program. I said, awesome. But in my head, what do I think? There's no chance I can win this deal. I do not have a European presence. I don't have an Asian presence. I don't speak Spanish. I don't have any of these things. I don't have any redundant abilities. Like, this isn't a great match. So I said, but there's a way I can make a living with them, and a good one. So I say, you know what? I'd love to do that. Just so that we're on the same page. Fair to say that you probably have people on all the continents of the world except for Antarctica, that you have thousands of people, that you need transcription, language, all these things. I don't have any of those. I don't know that I'm a really good fit with you. Oh, no, 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 no. We heard you're really great. To which I heard, I'm going to be column fodder. I am being brought in to give a proposal to bring down a billion-dollar company's proposal and keep it in check. And I decide I don't think I want to write a proposal to be their insurance policy to bring it down. So I say, yeah, I don't think it's a good fit. He's like, no, 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 you come highly recommended. This is legitimate. And I say, great. Well, let me ask you. So now I got to wound them. So my third thing that I do is Captain Obvious. I call it the when use. You should make a list of everything a good prospect would do. Every good prospect that has a brain, what should they do that they haven't done? I deduced that they probably should have done a needs assessment. So I said, hey, Doug, just so I don't think I'm a fit, but I'm willing to play. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions and we'll cut to the chase? He said, sure. I said, obviously, you've already talked to some other companies and you have proposals. Yep, great. So that we don't waste a lot of banter time, when you sat down and reviewed the needs assessment that they did, what did you come up with? Well, they didn't do a needs assessment. Oh, well, when you use psychological instruments to measure all of your people worldwide to see what you have, what's the difference between the high performers and the low performers? What were your findings on that? Doug, guess what they said?
I don't know. I don't have one or the other.
We didn't do that.
Yeah.
I asked about 8 of those. And then I heard them. This is back before Zoom, right? This is 20 years ago. So they're on a conference call and they think they're muted. And they go, we haven't done any of this? Jesus Christ. So they're like talking. And I'm just sitting there. And then they're like, well, we haven't done any of those things. Could you give us a proposal? And I'm like, well, time out. You got proposals for everyone else? I said, just since you haven't done a needs assessment, do you mind if I make up a couple things? What's the chance that you're frustrated that your people are calling too low and getting commoditized, that you're not getting upstairs, you're not getting to go back to upstairs. You have no relationship and everything's being sold on price, that you're getting crushed on margin erosion. Your deals are a lot more small. They're smaller than you'd like them to be. They're taking forever. You have projection dates that you don't meet. There's scope creep. You're not getting referrals. I keep adding this. He goes, we have all of those. I said, oh, but you called the biggest companies in the world to fix it, and they never took any time to do a needs analysis, to study your people. They never looked at your numbers, and they just gave you a proposal. And then the guy supposedly unmutes again. He's like, did we do that? He goes, yes. How'd you? And I said, you know what, Doug? You guys deserve each other. You're big companies. We're sending people out trying to buy. Instead of dealing with this, you've dealt with somebody who came in, feature preacher, vomited all over you a presentation. You guys got a price. You're looking to probably negotiate with me. I'm not interested. This is going to be a loser. You're going to waste tens of millions of dollars when it comes to the opportunity time of guessing and putting training out that will never work. And they go, I don't think I like your attitude. I'm like, are you open to an idea? You need to do a needs assessment, and you need to understand your people. What? Because right now, all of your dollars, all of your time, all of your pipeline, and the next 2 years of your pipeline is a guess, because you don't know what you're doing. And I suggested perhaps it would be helpful to know what your problems are, to be able to measure them, to have a rubric, to have an understanding of who should even be on your team, who did you mishire, all the bottom line. What did I sell them? A couple $100,000 assessment project and need scoping, which I could do from my place. And then I left because I could not solve the problem they really wanted, because I wouldn't put my life at it. You know, when we worked together, I spent some time running around in China and Australian stuff with Tony. But then I left. And the reason is my family was more important than being the guy that spoke after Tony Robbins. It's like, you got like, what do I really do? I think that's the fourth major theme. I think people that really are great, they understand their messaging, they understand they're problem solvers, right? Problem finders, not problem solvers. They bring up objections, they don't handle them. The fourth thing is they realize there's an abundance thing. When we think every prospect matters, it's because we don't believe there are enough prospects in the world.
Right.
When we realize there are more people in the world that have the problem we fix than we can ever get to, we don't want to deal with anyone who really doesn't have our problem. So in a world with 7 billion people or whatever it is, in a nation with 330 million, if we could visually put them in a line, one needs us the most, to the bottom needs us the least, or we could stack that in companies that are our kind of clients. If we could stack them from top to bottom, where should we spend all of our time?
On the ones that we feel are going to be the best fit for us.
We should probably only work with the top 20 or less of those.
Right.
Why? That top 20 who needs us most are going to be disproportionately likely to work with us. They're going to get a disproportionate return. Our deals are going to be bigger. They're going to be faster, and we're going to stay with them longer. Instead, a lot of people are looking and worshiping at the altar of crap revenue. Anyone's a prospect. They put stuff in, it doesn't work, and then they're stunned. Their business doesn't grow. Get rid of all of the clients that shouldn't be buying your stuff. Don't sell them. Don't let them buy. If they're not your people, stay away from them. And so I do these exercises, whether, well, you know, a mutual friend of ours, Tom Searcy and Gene McNaughton and I, we did a triune, and we helped one of Gene's buddies in Iowa. And it was a firm, been about 100 years old. I think it did about $68 million. And they had like 969 clients. And they hadn't sold anything of size for like 5 or 7 years. And they're like, well, can you help us? I'll be like, give me all of your clients and sequence them top revenue to bottom. And what I realize is 91% of the revenue is in 17 clients. 9% in 952. They're like, well, what do you think we should do? I said, I think you should fire 952 of your clients, package them up, sell them. You spend a ton of time with people that aren't, it's like catching sunnies, little fish that all day long you fish, you pull them up. And by the time you clean them, you get like a chicken, you get a fish McNugget out of it. And you're like, I'm tired. Like, you actually spend more energy than you get from the fish. Like, let's get rid of these drains of resources. They're like, no, we can't do it. They go, well, we want to go find someone new. I said, what do you mean someone new? You don't even have any share in your top 17 clients. Let's go after your number one client. Your number one client that does 15, 20% of your revenue. They have $1 billion more. Now they have all kinds of $1 billion companies. Here's what we did. We competed for that business, just one account. I told them, fire 5 guys. There were 6 salespeople. We fired 5. We had 1. We went to the world with 1. And in about 60 days, brought home a $100 million contract that we had to set up 3 additional facilities to put the employees on to deal with. When we know the problem that we solve and we talk about the problem here's the problems that we work on. People grab for you. They share, they sell themselves. People say you can't get access to anybody. I said, you know what? In this deal, for us to do it, we're going to have to call from the top down. They're about to go to RFP. We have no time. If you want this, so I talked to the COO and I coached the COO, call them directly. I want you to call the president, get an appointment. She was going on a trip with her grandkids, I think. She's taking them to Disney World. It's like, well, she's going to be in Florida. I said, you have a plane? Like, get a plane. Say, hey, the kids are going to sleep, right? Do you get up early? Are you going to breakfast? Meet me for breakfast in Orlando. He flies to Orlando, does the sales call. I remember it was 2013. The reason I know is I just left Cooperstown, jumped on a train in Albany, and I was headed to the All-Star game in New York. That was the one where Mariano Rivera was the MVP last game. I coached him on the train. He executed the play. You know what they said? We will slow down the RFP and you can talk to any of our executives you like. They competed against 8 companies that were $1 billion apiece. And Goliath got slain by David. Simple shot. You got to stock. You got to take a look. So if I prioritize, not everyone's my people. Does that make any sense, by the way?
All that makes sense. All that makes sense. Everything you're saying makes sense. And these are things that separate the 1%. And the reason I wanted to talk to you is because you and I have known each other for a long time, and you've always been in the 1%. I'm in the 1%. And so what I have found is we just do things slightly different. Like, it's not radically different sometimes, but it's just adjustments throughout the process.
I've gotten very tactical in these, like, their strategies. Know who your client is, be a problem solver, a lot of things like that. I didn't start with this idea because it seems so trite, but the top 1% knows who they are. They know who they are. They know who they're not. Leo Buscaglia was faculty member at USC. He's passed away. He wrote a book called Love. Maybe it was Personhood. I think it was Personhood. At the end of his book, he has a poem. Now, I don't remember this exactly, but I think it'll be close enough. Do you mind if I take a shot at it?
By all means, please.
I'm a plum. Not everybody loves plums. Lots of people love bananas. Anyone who loves bananas will think that I'm a second-rate banana if I try to be a banana. So you know what I am? I'm a plum. I put that in my head. I read that book. I love that book. See, the greatest sales books are psychology books, not stuff in the sales the sales thing at the business library. It's understand people. Companies don't buy anything. People buy stuff. People that know themselves, they know who they are. They realize that if you're a plum banana, lovers aren't going to buy you, quit trying to market and change banana lovers. Spend your time with the plum people. It's crazy, but not everybody loves me. I know, shocking. My wife loves me. She don't like me, but she loves me. So, I spend time with my people. I created a niche, by the way. I made a mistake. It's so weird. We talked about this before the show. You and I, the last time we saw each other was in Indianapolis. We were on the top of a stately building, far in the sky, big windows looking over the city of Indianapolis. And it happened to be March 12th, 2020. The night before, the Big Ten tournament was canceled. Hundreds of people leaving the city from every hotel. NBA canceled their season. And as we sat in that room, the conversation we had is, what are we going to do now? Because we knew that companies were going to shut down, that a bunch of them were going to put in their head in the sand, like thinking that because I'm not looking at stuff, there's nothing happening. I think, leveraging what happened that day, the key was to say, who is going to buy? Like, who do I serve? Who are my people? I realized that my private equity business was going to fall apart for 2 years. But I go, hey, if a bunch of people are going to die, and it looks like we might be in for some turbulence, the market's going to be volatile. I said, let's do financial planners. And so that day, I turned off one engine and I turned on a new one and said, today we coach financial advisors. We started off pretty pluralistic, like letting anyone in. Then we said, no, maybe eat your own dog food. We got rid of the little ones. And today, the last week and next week, the majority of my clients, not majority, a big percentage of my clients aren't coming to our classes because they're on a awards trip in Rome with their big company. Like, what I found is our message worked for top people. Now, going back, I love baseball. I positioned Major League Sales in 2019 saying, I love baseball. I made a metaphor for baseball. I sell with this baseball. I'm going to clean up because if I can't teach, my target market became people that had skyboxes. If you owned a company 10 to 300 million, it was privately held, it was in a skybox, and you used that to entertain clients, I am your puppy. Like, listen, I know how that thing works. If my baseball knowledge, my appreciation for that, my ability to create an event, my understanding of sales, if I can't sell someone who invested a fortune into Skybox, then I should just quit. So you could get very narrow. You can narrow not only the problem you solve, but the kind of people you like to spend time with. My problem, I did that in 2019. I waved my flag, and in 2020, no fans. The season had no skyboxes. 2021, didn't know if there was a season. Skyboxes, no one paid the money because they didn't know if they were going to play. 2022, a strike, baseball strike. They started this season that we're in the World Series right now. If we go back in the go back machine, there wasn't a season on April 1st. They didn't know what was going to happen. Skybox sales, boom, down to none of the launch. Sometimes it takes a while to be able to launch who your real people are. But next year, you can bet that I'll be gallivanting around on the greatest skyboxes at 30 stadiums in America because it can. And there's nobody that can make the claim that I can for that. Got to know who your people are.
Well said. We're speaking with Mr. Tommy Schaff. He owns a company called Major League Sales. Tommy, people who want to check you out, get to know more about you, how do they do so?
The best way is to go on the LinkedIn. If you go on LinkedIn, Tommy Schaff, SCHA, Frank, FF, that's probably the best way. We got a communication. And I'd love to hear any of your listeners.
I appreciate that. I know we're kind of at our time, but I want to ask you one more question, if you don't mind, if you give me a few more minutes here. You were talking about consequences and about how we should get our prospects the people, the potential buyers, to understand the consequences of the problem if they don't fix it. Could you go into that just a little deeper for people?
Which part? In the interest of time, tell me exactly what you want, and I'll go right into it.
So we've established that they had one of the top three or all three problems that they're having. But now, see, a lot of people recognize they have problems, but then they're not really kind of moving. They'll kind of stay in that place sometimes, right? We got to kind of get them to move off of, I've got a problem, and utilizing.
Because I'll do this in 6 minutes and I'll lay down.
There you go. Thank you.
I think you got to find out people's stories. So we use 3 hooks like they're bait. We call those treble hooks. When you fish in a stream or something, you might use 3 hooks, put pieces on bait so that you maximize the chances that they hook on anything. We're going to use a bait, a problem, and a problem, and a problem. We're going to throw those out so people bite on them. When they bite on them, now they need to sell us that they have this problem and they care about it. I call it find your stories. And stories, the acronym, we call it the Magnificent 7 stories. Situation, where are you? What do you got? What are your measurements? What's the key things? Target and timetable. Where do you want to be and when? What's going to happen when you do that? What's the price and size? Why did you want those things? Now we're going to go to obstacles. Obstacles are what could get in the way that would stop you, thwart your effort to get where you'd like, that you hope I can help you with. Response, what are you currently doing to mitigate those risks? Impact, if you don't change anything and stay your course, do you make it or what do you have to give up? And if you give something up, what's the impact on your employees, your stakeholders, your shareholders, your executives? What happens? Then after that, we like, do you care? That's emotions. Emotions. How do you feel about that? Do you care? Why? And then in summary, the summary, here's where you are. Situation. Target, here's where you're going and when. Obstacles, here's what's getting in the way. Responses, here's what you're doing about it. Impact, here's what happens if you do nothing. Your words, this is why you care about it, the emotion, and that's the summary. Then I'd say to them, how do we do? They go, you listen, this is really big. I got to get this done. They've sold me the whole time. That takes about 30 to 50 minutes. Then I'd say, Doug, I think I can help you. On a scale of 0 to 10, how's my understanding of your situation?
10.
Usually I get that, maybe sometimes a 15. Every once in a while, a student of mine will get a 9. If we get a 9, we'd say, hey, what's the part I misunderstood, wasn't smart enough to ask, or you withheld from me? And then they go, well, my company's for sale. Well, I'm going to smoke the CEO. Well, like the things that we never find out, they tell you that. And then I say anything else. I'll be like, at the beginning of this meeting, I told you that if I could help you, I would tell you. I unequivocally, absolutely, positively can help you. Would you like to get my point of view? And then in the point of view, I would say, here's what I think you're doing. I call it plus minus exclamation mark. Here's what you're doing great. Here's what I think is challenging for you and you better get a hold of. And this is my recommendation, the exclamation mark. As we go back, in order to get more impact, the key thing is you got to find the dream. What are they trying to do and why does it matter? What's the win if we do it? No dreams, nothing happens. After I get the dream that finding the obstacle you bid on, hey, they gave us the right problem. A thought that I'd like you to take away in closing is the problem they give us is never the problem they really have. That's like I went to my doctor and I'm getting a physical and he's got a coffee cup. I almost spit my lungs out laughing. It said, don't confuse your WebMD search with my Harvard MD. Be like, it's nice that you have a rumbly tumbly, Doug, but and you went on WebMD and you think that you have cancer, but how about you let me be the doctor? Now sit down, fill out this form, pee in a cup, stand on this thing, take off your clothes and sit on this toilet paper on this chair. And we're going to poke and probe you a little bit and do a physical. And then afterwards, when I get all my data, I do a diagnosis. And I say, you know what? I think you got this. And here's the prescription. I think you should do that. Don't operate on people or give prescriptions till you've done an adequate physical. Why? prospect doesn't really know. We live in a world, and our friend Amanda Holmes, Chet's daughter, recently rewrote the book for this. We live in a world where the prospect comes all the time thinking they know what they need, except for the mind that caused the problem can't solve the problem. Their diagnosis is usually wrong. We got to back up the truck and start it over. So in our obstacles, the 7 things that we do really quick. Hey, so let's just role play this really fast. I'd say, hey, you mentioned all these things at the beginning, and so that's going to be very helpful. Are there any other problems that you're hoping that that might get in the way of you getting to what you want that you hope I can help you with?
Sure. Yeah, there's I've got some partners, or I've got some people I got to report to here that may not feel the same way I do.
Great. What else?
Well, we're kind of running low on budget. I'm not really sure what this is going to,
I don't have any money. What else?
And I think, it's like just pull in all these resources at this time. We've got all these other initiatives going on.
Great. So there's competition for resources. Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
You know what? I wasn't sure. Sometimes, given what you shared with me so far, when I talk to other companies in the exact same situation, they often share 3 problems you didn't share. Do you mind if I throw them on the table just to see, so that we can measure twice, cut once? Now I give them the problems that they aren't thinking about. And when I give those problems to them, they go, I have those. Well, now I'm the best. How come they didn't get that from everybody else? Now, my third tranche is, when you talk to your team about this, what did you come up with? When you talk to the other people who have sat in this chair and you discuss this, what did you come to the conclusion on? When you did your needs analysis, when you tested your people, when you, we didn't do any of those. Now I pile all of those in a bucket. I go, I got a bucket. Here's what you gave me. Here's what we came up with. Here's some other things. What's number 1? What's number 2? What's number 3? Why did you pick why? Tell me more about that. Could you be more specific? Why did you pick number 2? Tell me more. Could you be more specific? Why'd you pick number 3? Tell me more. Can you be more specific? Doug Brown, you are a genius. You know a lot about your problem. How long have you been thinking about this?
2 years.
2 years, Doug? That's a long time. Maybe you're just used to it.
Well, never thought about it that way, Tom.
Now that you're thinking about it. Now, I'll tell you what happens in real life. They go, it's not that we haven't tried. It's just no shit works.
Yeah.
And then they blow up in front of you. And then they start selling you, well, what are you doing about it right now? I'm talking to you. Okay. Our job is to take somebody who thinks that they got it all together and like, dance, monkey boy, dance, make a presentation. Then we're going to beat the crap out of you and grind you in the dirt and let you make sense. No, when you solve dollars, we don't sell that way. We don't pitch. We wear them out. You get their stories, and that's how you get that leverage.
And so once you get the story, then is it, I've been doing this, let's say, I've been trying forever. It's 2 years. Do we quantify it in the value of dollars? Or
well, that's where so in stories, that's the O. Then it's the R. What are you doing about it? What are you doing specifically about this? Number 1, nothing. Number 2, well, we tried this. Number 3, okay, so you're not doing much. But Doug, when did you make a decision to do whatever it took to get this problem dead so you can move on and do the stuff you really love in this business and the things that contribute more, not only to the company, to your happiness?
I can imagine you're going to get a dead stare from that one. Let's see.
They say one of 2 things. They say, I haven't, or I just did. Now, the hardest part of this whole sales call is when they say I just did, not smiling. You got to stay sober. And then what we go into is that impact. So the quantification.
Yep.
Doug, I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. Not a problem. Don't solve it. Let's pretend I leave. No one else comes in. Everything stays the same. And you run the course of where you're at. What's the impact on the business? Probably hard to mention or measure, but if you were to guess ballpark numbers, what kind of dollars? They give you a range, 6 million to 10 million, closer to 6 million. Well, I wouldn't say that. Well, what would you say? Actually, it could be more than 10 million. Well, what is it? It's probably 11 million this year or every year. Sorry. Well, is that $11 million impact? If you don't solve it, does that happen again next year? Well, how long will that happen? What's the net present value of 11 million for into perpetuity? By the way, do you have an exit in the future? When you don't realize $11 million of profit, what's your multiple? 22? I don't know. I'm not greatest at math, but that sounds like about $242 million. When that doesn't happen, what other kind of stuff happens at this thing? By the way, you don't get any of that money, do you, Doug? Oh, you do? How does that work? Could cost you $6 million. I don't know what you make. Is that a lot or a little? That's a lot no matter who you are. Well, what are you going to have to give up if you don't get this? How do you feel about that? Do you care about that? Why? Now I can go back and go, here's what I heard. Here's where you are. Here's where you'd like to be. Here's what's getting in the way. This you've been thinking about it. It's not like you haven't been trying. It's just not working. Here's here's what you're doing about it. Not much. You just said, I got to solve this. If you don't solve it, this is the impact, this many million at exit, this $1 million for the 4 years till you have your exit. You're leaving this much on the table in bonuses. This is how your share of the stock is underappreciated. This is what you were hoping to do with it personally. This is what you don't get your second house. You don't get to quit when you want. You don't get to send your kid to Dartmouth because everyone wants to go to New Hampshire, Doug. This is how you feel about all that. How did I do? And that's how I'd get my 10 or more scale on a 10. And then I get to say, I can help you. Mind if I give you my point of view? Here's what I think you're doing great. Here's what I think there's trouble in River City. Here's what I think I would do. Then I'd actually go, I'll do one little last piece. My acronym to get paid is point of view, agreement of the point of view, investments, and decision. Paid, P-A-I-D. Investments, we often fight about the money. Remember when we used to go back and this guy that we work with, he would go into a sales call and he talked 59 minutes.
Sure.
And then he thought he did us a favor, and then we'd have to unload the truck and start all over while clients were laughing.
I remember.
When we pitch quickly, the objection we get is our price because we haven't established our value. When we do what I do, we have a big cost of not solving it compared to a little cost. But cost is never our problem. Money is never the problem. There are 3 investments. The 3 investments are time, money, and change. You've been a trainer, a consultant. What's the hardest thing?
Change.
What's the second hardest thing?
Time.
What's the easiest thing?
Money.
You know why people fight about money? Because we never got leverage on the size of the problem. And then when we got the leverage on the problem, we never said there's 3 investments to solve this. You mind if we deal with the hardest one first? Change is a bitch. Like, it's hard. This isn't going to be easy. You're going to have to do these things. You probably got to fire that guy. You got to do this, this, and this. You're going to have to probably change markets. You got to, if you don't have an appetite for this, or you're not going to personally watch and make sure it happens, this will not happen. Do you feel lucky? Do you, punk? I'm not saying we say that, but that, like, let's poke the bear. Then I say, hey, Doug, sounds like you're willing to make change, but here's the deal. Everybody wants like a miracle. Everybody wants like a Harvard education in 1 second. Everybody wants a long-term friend overnight. This thing, it took you decades to get in this spot. It doesn't happen in a quarter. This is going to take this long to turn the Queen Mary. For that to happen, we need you, and your family doesn't get any time, and I need you to be here for these things. Are you willing to spend the time, whatever we ask? Now, when we go to the money, well, the money is a lot easier.
Right.
Our good friend, Andy Miller, had a business partner, Ganesh Kulsa. Um, and Ganesh was a Sikh, really wonderful human, played guitar like with sitar with seal and stuff. He would say, "Do you got your seatbelt on, Doug?
Got it on.
You mind if we talk about money? You got your seatbelt on?
Okay. Yeah.
Buckle, wind where your hair used to be, wind blowing through where your hair used to be. We have a little fun with you." And you'd be like, "Yep." And by the way, what happened in my head to price?
I just minimized the whole process. And process of price isn't even there anymore. It's like almost like
Actually, the change, that's what happened when I dealt with change in time. But when I said, "Do you have your seatbelt on?"
yeah.
Be like, "Oh, this is going to
Oh,
be
here comes the price. Get it. All right.
buckled, wind blowing through the hair." And then you give them the price, and here's what they say every time: "I thought it was going to be less." And then I get to say, "Well, it's not like you have it." And so examples of that in real life, I did that. And the guy said, "Well, I don't have it right now, but I have half of it. What if I go across my second sale in my consulting career on my own in 1994? I needed the money. I was sleeping on my buddy's couch. And I go to this company, MB Sales, made Happy Meal toys in Oak Brook, Illinois. And I'm with this guy named Christian. And I say, "Hey, get your seatbelt unbuckled, wind blowing your hair, $120,000. And he said, "Oh, I thought it was going to be more." I said, "Well, it's not like you have it." He goes, "I don't have it, but I can get half of, I mean, I have half of it right now." I'm like, "Well, then how does the rest work?" He goes, "This is like September. Our fiscal year is over in October. What if I run over? I can make him give me 60,000 right now. It's in my budget. And then I'll just put it in the next one. And I promise you, we'll pay you on November 1 when the new thing comes in." And then I tried not to cry because I had to go to my bride and go, "We have money." So that's how that works.
That's awesome. You know, you and I can talk all day, and I want to respect your time. I appreciate you being here. Anything in closing that you would recommend to people to, like, I mean, above and beyond everything I mean, you brought your A game, so anything above and beyond?
Yeah, I got one idea. First of all, we don't have to be perfect. To be in the top 1%, the best thing to understand is what you're not and own it. I did a little bit about this, be a plum instead of the banana kind of thing.
Right.
I think whenever I think about another difference of what makes the top 1% is comes from the Velveteen Rabbit. Do you remember this book?
I remember the book.
Velveteen Rabbit, there's like a little rabbit, and it's the huggy for a guy who's probably got TB or something. He's sick, can't go outside. And all day long, he watches out the door and he sees the little rabbits playing in the yard. And the boy longs to go play with the rabbits. And so he hugs his little huggy, little fake rabbit, stuffed rabbit. And he hugs him and hugs him. And then at night, the toys all get together and they go, "Boy, wouldn't it be nice to be real? Wouldn't it be nice to run in the meadow and have the boy play with this? I wish it could be real. If I could do anything, I would be real." Skin horse, for they called him that because he had a hide from when he was a horse. Skin horse, you were real. What's it like to be real? Well, it doesn't happen very often. Usually happens when you're old. Your eyes fall off, your seams are split, all your warm and fuzzies have rubbed off, but nobody cares because you're real. The pretense, the dance, the "I'm better, we're smarter, I'm the best problem solver, we're number one, we're the biggest," isn't real.
Right.
It's posing. But the people who can be vulnerable, who can tell what they're not, stand for who they are, have the humble swagger of any good baseball team, where when you come in a Red Sox uniform or a Yankees uniform or a Cardinals uniform, it's worth 10 wins at the beginning of the season just because they go, "Holy hell, look at those guys." It's to say, I can't help everyone, but for the people that I've spent my life learning how to serve, they'll never get solved by anyone else. And to have transparency on what we are and what we're not, to be that real, that's the meta skill of the top 1%.
I firmly agree with you on this. That's in me doing group things, right? When we worked together before. And that was part of the key of being able to convert, because you don't know everything. I mean, and the more real we are, the more people can relate and they go, okay, I'm like you, you're like me. But you have this expertise and I have this problem and I have these consequences to this problem. And we've gone through this whole process. That, to me, that's one of the top things that it's not something that even needs to be taught. It's just people need to must relax and be themselves and not worry about it. Like, oh, I'm talking to the CEO of Procter and Gamble, so that person must be way up here. I've got to be below them, because as soon as I find a position that way, the game is now I'm going to chase this person, right? So it's not what you're doing. So I have found, and I firmly agree with you, just be yourself and understand that president or CEO of whatever company you're talking with, you and I have had the pleasure of working with some really great people, Tony Robbins and, people like that. They have fears, they have desires, they have wants, they have problems just like everybody else. So if we position as people and just let them know where our expertise are and let us know some of where our vulnerabilities are, like you did with that guy, and say, hey, maybe I'm not your guy, right? Because you knew you couldn't take it to that $1 billion competition level because it's just not you. I think that is one of the strongest selling points, because when they buy, they know what they're getting.
Well, one of the things, as we round out and end this session, I want to thank you, Doug, for having me on your show.
You're welcome.
I want to thank you for the years where you set up them, that we could knock them down 12, 13 years ago. What I really want to thank you is you were real then and you haven't changed. You're still the same guy with all your success, and you deserve all the great successes you're having. Thanks for having me be on your show.
Really appreciate that, Tommy. Thanks for being here. All right. Well, I hope you have a whole host of notes here. Look, to get into the top 1% of selling, be yourself. That is a key element in being in the top 1%. Be yourself. Like Tommy said, if you're a plum, be a plum, right? If you're a banana, be a banana. Don't try to be a banana if you're trying to sell the plums. Understand your messaging, understand where you're going, understand what you're looking for, understand who you're going after, understand what the messaging should be, understand what the problems they face should and are, explain those, get into understanding what the consequences are for them, and let them sell back to you. That is a key component. Listen, if you love this podcast, please go give it a 5-star review. If you love the information here in this particular podcast and you go, man, I want a specific subject matter, and maybe you're the expert or maybe you don't have an expert. If you are the expert or don't, email us at youmatter, youmatter, at ceosalesstrategies.com. Let us know what your idea is. If it works for the show, we'll have you on. If it doesn't, or I should say, if you're not the expert and it works for the show, we'll find the resource for you. And if it doesn't work, we'll let you know that as well. So thanks so much for listening to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast this time. If you or someone you know wants to be in the top 1% of earners selling worldwide in your industry, reach out to me. Or if you're a company looking for those elite performers already trained and you just want to put them into your company, reach out to me as well at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. Until next time, go sell something, sell it profitably, sell a lot of it. Play win-win. Make someone happy, make yourself happy, make the world a better place. To your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit ceosalesstrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.